Everyone loves the first day of school, right? New year, new classes, new friends. It's a day full of potential and hope, before all the dreary depression of reality show up to ruin all the fun. I like the first day of school for a different reason, though. You see, I have a sort of power. When I look at people, I can sense sort of an aura around them, a colored outline based on how long that person has to live. Most everyone I meet around my age is surrounded by a solid green hue, which means they have plenty of time left. A fair amount of them have a yellow-orangish tinge of their auras, which tends to mean a car crash or some other tragedy. Anything that takes people before their time, as they say. The real fun is when the auras venture into the red end of the spectrum, though. Every now and again, I'll see someone who's basically a walking spotlight. With that in mind, I always get to class very early so I can scout out my classmates' fates. The first kid who walked in was basically radiating red. I chuckled to myself. Too damn bad. Too damn bad, bro. But as people kept walking in, they all had the same intense glow. I finally caught a glimpse of my rose-tinted reflection in the window, but I was too stunned to move. Our professor stepped in and locked the door. His aura, a sickening shade of green. He awoke to huge, insect-like creatures looming over his bed and screamed his lungs out. They hastily left the room and he stayed up all night, shaking and wondering if it had been a dream. The next morning, there was a tap on the door. Gathering his courage, he opened it to see one of them gently place a plate filled with fried breakfast on the floor, then retreat to a safe distance. Bewildered, he accepted the gift. The creatures chittered excitedly. This happened every day for weeks. At first, he was worried they were fattening him up, but after a particular greasy breakfast left him clutching his chest from heartburn, they were replaced with fresh fruit. As well as cooking, they poured hot steam baths for him, and even tucked him in when he went to bed. It was bizarre. One night, he awoke to gunshots and screaming. He raced downstairs to find a decapitated burglar being devoured by the insects. He was sickened, but disposed of the remains as best he could. He knew they had just been protecting him. One morning the creatures wouldn't let him leave his room. He lay down, confused, but trusting as they ushered him back into bed. Whatever their motives, they weren't going to hurt him. Hours later, burning pain spread throughout his body. It felt like his stomach was filled with razor wire. The insects chittered as he spasmed and moaned. It was only when he felt a terrible squirming feeling beneath his skin that he realized the insects hadn't been protecting him. They had been protecting their young. I hate it when my brother Charlie has to go away. My parents constantly try to explain to me how sick he is, that I am lucky for having a brain where all the chemicals flow properly to their destinations like undammed rivers. When I complain about how bored I am without a little brother to play with, they try to make me feel bad by pointing out that his boredom likely far surpasses mine, considering his confined to a dark room in an institution. I always beg for them to give him one last chance. Of course, they did at first. Charlie has been back home several times, each shorter in the duration than the last, every time without fail. It all starts again. The neighborhood cats with the gouged out eyes showing up in his toy chest, my dad's razors found dropped on the baby slide in the park across the street, mom's vitamins replaced by bits of dishwasher tablets. My parents are hesitant now, using last chances sparingly. They say his disorder makes him charming, makes it easy for him to fake normalcy, and a trick to the doctors who care for him into thinking he is ready for rehabilitation. that I will just have to put up with my boredom if it means staying safe from him. I hate it when Charlie has to go away. It makes me have to pretend to be good until he is back.
We bought a new house, my boyfriend and I. He's in charge of the new construction. Converting the kitchen into a master bedroom, for instance. I'm on wallpapering removal. The previous owner repaired every wall and ceiling. Removing it is brutal, but oddly satisfying. The best feeling is getting a long peel, similar to your skin when you're peeling from a sunburn. I don't know about you, but I kind of make a game of peeling, on the hunt for the longest piece before it rips. Under a corner section of paper in every room is a person's name and date. Curiosity got the best of me one night when I Googled one of the names and discovered the person was actually a missing person. The missing date matching the date under the wallpaper. The next day, I made a list of all the names and dates. Sure enough, each name was a missing person with dates to match. We notified the police, who naturally sent out the crime scene team. I overheard one text say, "Yep, it's human." Human? What's human?
Ma'am, where's the material you removed from the walls? Already? This isn't wallpaper you were removing. A message from your personal demons. Hello, my dear. You do not know who I am, but I know you. I am one of the 3 demons that were assigned at your birth. You see, some people in this world are not destined for greatness, destined to live happy, fulfilled lives. You, I'm afraid, are not one of those people. And it is our job to make sure of that. Who are we? Oh yes, of course. How rude of me. Allow me to introduce us. Shame is my younger brother, the demon on your left shoulder. Shame tells you that you're a freak, that those thoughts you have are not normal. You will never fit in. Shame whispered into your ear when your mother found you playing with yourself as a child. Shame is the one who makes you hate yourself. Fear sits at your right shoulder. He is my brother, as old as life itself. Fear fills every dark corner of monsters, turns every stranger on a dark street into a murderer. Fear stops you from telling your crush how you feel. He tells you it is better not to try than let people see you fail. Fear makes you build your own prison. Who am I then? I am the most. I am the worst of your demons. But you see me as a friend. You turn to me when you have nothing else, because I live in your heart. I am the one who forces you to endure, the one who prolongs your torment. Sincerely, Hope. Sleep well. I don't want to sound mean, but the dead are pretty clueless. I've always seen them. When I was younger, everyone thought I was just talking to imaginary friends. After a couple years, when I overheard my parents talk about calling a psychologist, I realized what I was talking to. See, ghosts don't tend to realize they're dead, and they don't look like in the movies. They look just like us. I'm pretty smart for a 13-year-old, so I started noticing certain patterns to tell them apart from the living. They could be a bit distant from living people, or you'd see them to try to talk to people who wouldn't even notice them. Some of them could tell I was different. that I noticed them, like this guy I saw after school yesterday. I'm a big boy now. See, I don't need my parents to pick me up. Home is just a short walk away. He was standing away from the other parents, didn't talk to them, just stared at me. That's how I knew he was one of the ghosts. I went over, told him I knew what he was, and asked how I could help him. I don't remember much after that. I think because of what happened this morning. Downstairs, my parents were crying. I tried talking to them, but they ignored me. They must have died last night. Somehow, sometimes the new ghosts wouldn't talk to me. Some police officers and reporters just arrived. They won't talk to me either. Just my parents. It's weird. I never seen many ghosts together before. Why won't anyone talk to me? Mommy always leaves me and Daddy home on Saturday nights, and me and Daddy always get ice cream in the car after dinner. I have to sit in the back seat until I'm a big boy. I go in the kitchen to see what Daddy is cooking for dinner after my Barney movie is over, but he's not in there this time. I saw a note on the counter that said Mommy and Uncle James were going somewhere together. I'm not sure. I don't read that good. I go find Daddy in the garage. I shut the door behind me like I'm supposed to. Daddy is in the car, and he already has the car turned on. We must not be eating dinner tonight, only ice cream. I get in the back seat behind Daddy since I'm not a big boy yet. Daddy doesn't say anything when I said hello to him. Maybe he can't hear me over the loud car. I think I'll take a nap on the way to ice cream. I feel kind of sleepy. Here they come again, the brave ones. Another Halloween night, and the kids are all back, here to prove their fearlessness. The old house's floorboards creak beneath their sneakers. Only half an hour until midnight, so I have to work fast. I start with their flashlight blowing lightly against it so that it flickers, but this inspires little more than a nervous giggle. 15 minutes until midnight, time to take it up a notch. I hover over to the ceiling and wheel my body into flesh. My every nerve is on fire, but they're giving me no choice. I force drops of blood to trickle out my nose, but the boys below don't notice. I knock against the ceiling, but they won't even look up. I thought this place was supposed to be haunted, says the leader. What a joke. 5 minutes until midnight. I'm running out of time. With the last of my strength, I scream, so loud that they finally turn to look up at me. I like to think I put on a good show. I sway on an invisible noose, and the blood flows freely from my nostrils now. A couple of drops hit a skinny one with a crew cut. The boys scream and run into the night. Just in time, below me, I hear the thing turn. Its disappointment palpable. For now, it sleeps, but one day, I will fail. The boys will be too brave, and I won't scare them out in time. One day, they will wake it. Last night, a friend rushed me out of the house to catch the opening act at a local bar's music night. After a few drinks, I realized my phone wasn't in my pocket. I checked the table where we were sitting, the bar, the bathrooms, and after no luck, I used my friend's phone to call mine. After 2 rings, someone answered, gave out a low, raspy gurgle, and hung up. They didn't answer again. I eventually gave it up as a lost cause and headed home. I found my phone laying on my nightstand, right where I left it. I flung myself through the door and vaulted the toppled, long, dead refrigerator that served as an ineffective barricade in front of me. My legs propelled me through the room and into the small hallway on the other side. I couldn't stop to eat the expired contents from the fridge, appealing to me despite their stench after several days without food. The shrieks of pain and cries for mercy around me spurred my body onward and filled me with unexpected energy in spite of my hunger. We were at war. I came to a halt in front of a small bathroom. A noise, something behind the shower curtain. My fear heightened and images on the enemy flooded my mind. Merciless beasts wearing human skin, devouring indiscriminately, accepting no pleas and respecting no argument. Zombies. It had begun, as we expected, with a virus. The original infected were almost a cliche. There was no humanity left in them, just mindless rage, twisted bodies and some primal urge to consume others. Our generation had prepared, with almost obsessive focus, for this monster. The first wave was eradicated with almost laughable ease. We were not prepared for adaptation. We were not prepared for the creature we bred by destroying the instantly recognizable zombie. A creature with more tact. Most of the first zombies were killed at close range. You understand? Since longer range attacks were less likely to be fatal, we had trained ourselves, even before the outbreak, to equate infection with death when it came to zombies. A person died when their eyes clouded over and they started biting, not when you put a bullet in their head. The new strain of the virus still controlled the body, yes, but it left other faculties to the host. Maybe you could pull the trigger on a hopelessly crazed caricature of your best friend, your spouse, your child. But what if there was still a soul behind those eyes? If even as they attacked, they sobbed and screamed in their own voice, all the virus needed was a moment's hesitation. I bet you'd hesitate. I did. Which is why now I can only watch as my arm wrenched back the shower curtain and my hands reached for the cowering child. Why I could only beg for forgiveness before the virus used my mouth to tear ragged, bloody hunks from his body. Why I couldn't even vomit as my hunger dissipated with the now sickeningly familiar taste of human flesh. We were at war, and I am the enemy. I pointed the gun at the sick bastard who killed my wife. He sobbed as he feared for what was to come. I pulled the trigger. If only he spoke and tried to reason with me, then maybe he could have lived. But that was obviously not going to happen. After all, he was born just a few minutes ago. Little Emily vanished last year. Now they're pouring new sidewalks in my neighborhood, and I found her name in the wet cement, written in remembrance, but it was written in reverse, and from below. I bought a new house in a small town of Winthrop. The house was cheap, but the most important part was that I needed to get away from the city. A few months ago, I had a run-in with a stalker. While I had managed to get him arrested, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes just constantly watching me. I felt like there were eyes everywhere, at home and on the street, so I decided to move out into the country, to somewhere with less people, just for peace of mind. The house itself was big and somewhat old, but otherwise very welcoming. The agent who introduced me to the house had been required to mention that a serial killer had lived here in the past, which was why the house was so cheap. However, he, and later my next-door neighbor, Sarah, both told me to pay the thought, no mind. For other owners had lived in the house since then, and all of them were very happy with it. I love the house. Its interior furnishings were beautiful and very comfortable. The people of Winthrop were friendly, often bringing over freshly baked pastries or inviting me over for dinner. Get-togethers, they said. Get-togethers were the key to making sure everyone who lived in Winthrop loved it there. Yet after a week, I stopped loving it. The feeling of someone watching returned, worse than before. I tried to ignore it, but soon I started losing sleep. While no one knows his exact kill count, Carter, also known as Winthrop Peacock, was a man with extremely severe case of narcissism. Legends say he couldn't fall asleep if he didn't feel like he was being watched. He was finally arrested for putting up a scarecrow to watch him during the night. Only it wasn't a scarecrow. Carter had murdered a 17-year-old girl just so her corpse could stare at him. The story gave me shivers, and after I went home, I felt like there were hundreds of pairs of eyes just watching me no matter how I turned. Today, however, was the first day that I acted out. I was cooking breakfast when I felt the eyes. Instinctively, out of fear, I threw my kitchen knife, which lodged itself into the wall. As I pulled it out, I found myself staring at a pair of eyes, pickling in formaldehyde. I've been watching the police peel away the drywall of my house for hours now. So far, they found 142 pair of eyes in little glass jars. Scariest thing is, each and every one was staring at me. Look, I'll be first to admit I'm a complete bastard. I'm also lazy. I'm only here to find the idiot, because there's almost always an idiot. This support group is pretty typical. We connected online, decided on a quiet place, and now we're all sitting cross-legged in a circle. Real kumbaya crap. Jerome takes the lead, pouring everyone a cup of tea as he starts talking. I'm Jerome. You can drink your tea, but only after explaining why you're here. I'll start. Jerome tells us he's never been loved. I can see why. The guy's ugly as sin. He sips his tea while the moosey cheek speaks next. Me you, she says. My parents, short and sweet, no blubbering. Gotta admire Miyu. She's probably not that idiot. Next to talk are a legless veteran, a broke businessman, needle-tracked junkie, and a diseased old crone. Then it's my turn. I'm an ass. Everyone hates me. I take a loud, annoying slurp of oolong as the fat kid with a black eye goes next, telling his boring fat kid sob story. Afterwards, we're all sitting quietly when Jerome kneels over. Then Miyu's eyes roll back, and she slumps forward. Only the fat kid reacts. What's happening? He whines. I thought this was a suicide support group. Found the idiot. It is, I say, spitting out my mouthful of tea. They support it. No one wants to die alone, kid. Oh, how Ghost Whitey turns, looking into his cup. I love it. These suicide meetups are a sadist dream, and I never have to lift a finger. Told you I'm a lazy bastard. Where are you? I screamed, panicked. I run through the abandoned farm. I can't find her. Not in the old house, not in the barn. I run into the empty field. My heart is racing. As I scan the area, I run into a mound of dirt and trip, spiraling to the ground, getting up. It hits me. Abandoned farm. I tripped over freshly tilled earth. Crouching down, I start frantically clawing with my hands, scooping handfuls of dirt. I hit something hard. Wood. Are you in there? I cry, pressing my ear to the wood. I hear muffled cries. I start digging again, but I realize it's taking too long. Looking around, I see a garden shed. I sprint to it, ripping the door open. I see the shovel still caked in dirt, probably the same one the bastard buried her with. I grab it. Running back, I start digging with purpose. Soon the wooden box is exposed. I toss the shovel, rip open the crate. She stares back at me, eyes wide, bound, gagged, but alive. I sigh with relief, thank God. I reach into my bag, pulling out my rag and chloroform. I crouch down, placing it over her face. She struggles, faints. I toss her over my shoulder. Oh, hell, my brother says as I walk back to the truck with a smirk. You almost had me, though. I laugh. All right, my turn. Where did you put her? I gesture to the creek area, somewhere over there. Drowning is an issue, though. Jerk, he says, running off. I smile, watching him go. I love adult hide and seek. People started falling from the sky by the close of the decade. They were never clothed, always naked, always a petrifying grin on their faces. It had been just a few at first, but then hundreds and thousands would fall at a time, destroying cars, homes, blocking off highways. Strange discoveries were made upon research. They were human, but lacked human blood, intestines, even a heart. No one could explain the hideous grins they had, or even where they came from. It was a woman in Costa Rica who made the latest, most disturbing discovery. She recognized one of the fallen bodies as a long-dead relative who died back when she had been a teenager. The more and more identifications were made. Soon people were picking out their long-dead loved ones amongst the video feeds, cadaver piles, the crematoriums. No one could explain why they were coming back, falling from the sky. Even more distressing, after disposing of the bodies, it wouldn't be long until that same body came plummeting from the sky again. You could not get rid of them, no matter what. People were getting killed by the higher volume of falling bodies, and soon after burial, they too began to fall. My mother was killed when a body landed on her car, crushing her. The next week, the news reported a body that had gotten lodged in an airplane windshield. I saw my mother's grinning face, the happiest I had ever seen her. They say when hell is full, the dead shall walk the earth. What about heaven? I don't know why I looked up, but when I did, I saw him there. He stood against my window. His forehead rested against the glass, and his eyes were still and light, and he smiled a lipstick red, cartoonish grin. And he just stood there in the window. My wife was upstairs sleeping. My son was in his crib and I couldn't move. I froze and I watched him looking past me through the glass. Oh, please no. His smile never moved, but he put a hand up and slid it down the glass, watching me. With matted hair and yellow skin and face through the window, I couldn't do anything. I just stayed there, frozen, feet still in the bushes I was pruning. Looking into my home, he stood against my window. The doctor pulled the stethoscope ear tips out and hung the device around his neck. Mr. Weatherby, all of your tests have come back negative and my examination shows nothing abnormal. Adam knew what was coming next. I'm not crazy. Doctor, I'm sorry, but there's no physical reason why you occasionally lose control of your hands. A psychologist can help. I don't need therapy. I need answers. They seem to have a life of their own. I can't hold a job. I'm under investigation for assault. I almost killed my neighbor. This can't go on. I'll try anything at this point. After 2 weeks on a new medication, Adam saw no progress and grew increasingly depressed. He was convinced that despite what the doctor said, it was not a psychological problem. That night, a frustrated and angry Adam sat in a chair and drank bourbon. Drunk and hopeless, he stumbled to the garage and started the table saw, then slowly lowered his wrist toward the screaming blade. Detective Armstrong entered the garage where several uniformed officers stood over the blood-soaked body. So, what do we got? He asked, taking in the blood-splattered scene. This is a weird one. Detective, how so? Take a look at the body. He apparently chopped off his hands with the table saw and bled to death. Armstrong knelt down. And we can't find his hands anywhere. Haven't you ever walked into a room and found a vampire? No, not the sexy kind, but a foul creature with bony limbs and ashen skin. The kind that snarls as you enter, like a beast about to pounce, the kind that roots you to the spot, sunken hypnotic eyes, rendering you unable to flee as you watch the hideous thing uncoil from the shadows. Has your heart started racing, though your legs refuse to? Have you felt time slow as the creature crosses the room in the darkness of a blink? Have you shuddered with fear when it places one claw hand atop your head and another under your chin so it can tilt you, exposing your neck? Have you squirmed as its rough, dry tongue slides down your cheek, over your jaw to your throat in a slithering search that's seeking your artery? Have you felt its hot breath release in a hiss against your skin when it probes your pulse, the flow that leads to your brain? Has its tongue rested there, throbbing slightly as if savoring the moment? Have you then experienced sinking, sucking blackness as you discover that not all vampires feed on blood, some feed on memories? Well, have you? Maybe not. But let me rephrase the question. Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly forgotten why you came in? It was 1 a.m., and Guy Halverson sat in his dark living room. He hadn't moved for over an hour. The accident earlier that evening kept playing over and over in his mind. The light turned red, but he was in a hurry and accelerated. An orange blur came from his right, and in a split second there was a violent jolt. The bicyclist rolled across his hood and fell out of sight on the pavement. Horns blared angrily and he panicked. Stepping on the gas and screeching away from the chaos into the darkness, shaking and keeping an eye on his rearview mirror until he got home. Why did you run? You idiot. He'd never committed a crime before this, and punished himself by imagining years in jail, his career gone, his family gone, his future gone. Why not just go to the police right now? You can afford a lawyer. Then someone tapped on the front door, and his world suddenly crumbled away beneath him. Damn. They found me. There was nothing he could do but answer it. Running would only make matters worse. His body trembling, he got up, went to the door and opened it. A police officer stood under the porch light. "Mr. Halverson?" asked the grim officer. "Yes." "I'm terribly sorry, but I'm afraid I have some bad news. Your son's bike was struck by a hit and run this evening. He died at the scene. I'm very sorry for your loss." My daughter woke me up around 11:50 last night. My wife and I picked her up from her friend Sally's birthday party, brought her home, and put her to bed. My wife went into the bedroom to read while I fell asleep watching the Braves game. "Daddy?" she whispered, tugging my shirt sleeve. "Guess how old I'm going to be next month?" "I don't know, beauty," I said as I slipped on my glasses. "How old?" She smiled and held up 4 fingers. "It is 7:30 now. My wife and I have been up with her for almost 8 hours. She still refuses to tell us where she got them." It has been said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. I understand the sentiment behind the saying, but it's wrong. I entered the building on a bet. I was strapped for cash and didn't buy into the whole legends of the hotel to begin with. So $50 was more than enough to get me to do it. It was simple. Just reach the top floor, 45th floor, shine my flashlight from a window. The hotel was old and broken, including the elevator, so that meant hiking up the stairs. So up the stairs I went. As I reached each platform, I noticed the old brass plaques displaying the floor numbers: 15, 16, 17, 18. I felt a little tired as I crept higher. But so far, no ghost, no cannibals, no demons, piece of cake. I can't tell you how happy I was as I entered the last stretch of numbers. I joyfully counted them aloud at each platform: 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 44, 44. I stopped and looked back down the stairs. I must have miscounted, so I continued up. 44, one more flight, 44, and then down 10 flights, 44, 15 flights, 44, 44, 44, 44, 44. And so it's been for as long as I can remember. So really, insanity isn't doing something repeatedly and expecting different results. It's knowing that the results will never, ever change. That each door leads to the same staircase, the same number. It's realizing you no longer fall asleep. It's not knowing whether you've been running for days or weeks or years. It's when the sobbing slowly turns into laughter.